Hello and welcome to Maltbox, the non-chill filtered whiskey blog. I'm Andy, this is Luna, and this is Whiskey Review 115. This is also the third part in a four-part mini-series where I'm taking a look at American whiskies across the bourbon and rye range. What I have for you today is another bourbon. This is the third bourbon in the row, so we're leaving the rye till last. It's a relatively budget bourbon, to be honest with you. It's a bourbon that, again, is quite easy to find in the UK. You can get it in supermarkets, you can get it online at specialist retailers, and online at places like Amazon. It's a bourbon whiskey, bottled at 43%, or 86 proof, if we're looking at it that way. And it's this, Old Forester Bourbon Whiskey. And Old Forester, it's probably, I think it is actually the oldest brand of bourbon around. I think it was established in 1870 off the top of my head. Sorry, you're right. Now, as I open with, this is bottled at 43%. It's got quite a nice sort of branding on it there. It was changed a few years ago from memory. Now, I picked this up on Amazon. It was on offer. I think it was 18 quid, something like that. £18. It is on offer quite a lot. I think when it's full price, it's max 25 quid. I've seen it here in the UK online. It might be a little bit more when you go into retail stores like specialist whiskey merchants because they've got overheads, they've got rent, etc. to pay for. So, bottled at 43%. Again, as with bourbon whiskey, there's no colouring. It's matured in brand new casks. There's that colour. It's got a nice rich dark colour actually. Nice copper. Some relatively slow legs going down the glass there. Unlike the previous two whiskies, this, as you can see, is a screw top rather than a cork, which it doesn't make a massive difference. I mean, you know, corks break. They're also quite intensive to the environment to produce. Screw caps, you know, are good, to be honest with you. They're reusable. You can reuse the bottle after, yada yada yada. So, a little bit about Old Forester. Now, I'm glad that I've lost the front of the bottle because I've forgotten his name. This was actually a brand founded by a Mr. George Garvin Brown. The Brown being of Brown-Forman. Brown-Forman, now one of the bigger drinks companies in the world. They own Jack Daniels, Old Forester, and recently they purchased, if you remember, Glendronach, Benriach and Glenglassaugh distilleries in Scotland. So they're getting a big footprint in that whiskey world. On the nose. That's interesting. Now, what I'm getting there, and the reason I say this is interesting, and this is probably going to be more for the people in the UK who will understand this, on the nose there for me is something called a 10p mix. And what that is, it's going to sound like a ridiculous concept. I don't even know if they do them anymore, but in little newsagent shops, confectionery shops, and places like that, general store, if you will, for 10p, so 10 pence, when I was a kid, you used to be able to go up to the counter and they would have these pre-made, so a little paper bag, and they would have random sweets, random candy in it. You never know what you were going to get, but they were 10p. It was generally like a lollipop or, you know, and then a couple of other, you know, Haribo sweets or something like that. And I'm getting that mix of those sweets and paper. It sounds bizarre, honestly, but it's what I get. I mean, your reference to flavour, your reference library is what you've picked up over the years of your life. You can't explain flavours that you've not experienced. I mean, at the end of the day, it's how you train your senses. That's if you've never eaten an orange before and I handed you an orange to eat, you wouldn't have known what that tasted like until you tried it, would you? It's a bit of sherbet, keeping on that confectionery front. bit of slight smokiness there, which isn't something I came across in the Bullet or the Maker's Mark. A little tiny bit of smokiness in there, more like charcoal kind of smokiness, like a barbecue kind of smokiness, not a peat smoke or a dried herbaceous burning leaf kind of smoke. Still very sweet. Toffee. And again, there's that cherry that we've had across the 3 bourbons so far. And maybe a little bit of black tea on there as well, so tea without milk. On the palate, that was short-lived. Yeah, literally quite short-lived. Initially I thought I was going to get a really nice mouthfeel. It felt quite oily, and I swallowed it and it just, boom, gone. It's really kind of just an echo of flavour more than intense, rich flavours that you can sort of discern and pick apart. I mean, but what I am kind of left with is a little bit of milky coffee. There was some toffee in there. The finish, pretty much non-existent, if I'm being perfectly honest. Very, very short, maybe a slight echo of that toffee note. I'm going to try again just to make sure I'm not going mad. Although that is always a possibility, to be fair, let's face it. Okay, maybe a little bit of biscuity note. Again, is there some smokiness in there? Quite possibly, but I would reiterate it's more of that sort of charcoaly, barbecuey smoke rather than peat or, you know, burning paper or burning wood. Yeah, as you can tell, I was kind of struggling there on the palate, if I'm being honest. The nose was better than the palate. I mean, you know, at the end of the day, as I said, I think I paid 18 quid for this. It's kind of one of the examples. I think, you know, there is value out there. Is this giving you value for 18 quid? I mean, it's giving you a 43% bourbon, which you could argue, yeah, that's fine. And it's pretty simple, it's pretty straightforward. You don't have to think too much about it. I don't think you could really think too much about it, to be fair. I would like to have seen a bit more intensity, a little bit more depth, given it's bottled at that extra 3% as well at 43. Just to reiterate, there it is on the label, guys. And apologies again for the camera going slightly dark there. Improv lighting setup, you see. And just to reiterate, I am by no means an expert in bourbon. I'm not an expert in Scotch, to be honest with you. I'm not an expert in anything. However, I can honestly say that this is quite a letdown as bourbon goes. I've had better ones that have been bottled for supermarkets. Yeah, that's alright, 18 quid. So, as I mentioned in the previous reviews, what I will be doing is using this to make a quick cocktail video that I will be posting on the channel as well. So if you'll have watched the previous review where I looked at Bullet Bourbon, you'll see that I made a pineapple whiskey sour. Now what I'm going to be making with the Old Forester is something called a Boulevardier, which is really, really simple cocktail, pretty much as simple as it gets after an old-fashioned, arguably. I think it'll probably lend itself quite well to it. And if you fancy watching that, yeah, stick around and have a look out for it at the channel. Speaking of the channel, if you like what you've seen today, maybe not the whiskey, please do feel free to subscribe. I won't beg you. I do just appreciate every single person that subscribes. You are the reason that I do this. If you've not checked out my social media, I'm on Twitter at Maltbox and I'm on Instagram at Maltbox Whiskey. So, thank you very much for watching, guys. See you soon.